Oh, I forgot I meant to record this so I can publish it on the internet and everybody can hear your complaints. So that's a good one. And that's the one I don't think I've paid attention to so far, is this idea of just kind of blah, blah, blah for essentially 2.5 hours with a break in the middle. I mean, I'm not respecting that you came from a class that might be like that, and then you're going to a class that might be like that. And in terms of, we call that ergonomics, by the way, as a human, what's our interface and what's the effect of working in this context. And this is terrible. And by the way, I don't teach this isn't my profession, so so I'm not being as empathetic as I need to be quite frank, because I come and I do these 3 hours and then I'm gone. I'm working with my team online and I'm doing things, but I'm not in your situation. So I appreciate that feedback. I'll do it. I'll try today even to, mix it up a little bit, and then even in the future, Benjamin, like breakout rooms as we work on our projects after the midterm. I think that will facilitate more of that kind of working, but get up if you want to go walk your dog or do your laundry, whatever, and come back, and but not 3 hours of this is insane. So I take that. Any other thoughts or other positive experiences people might have had in other classes, or not even other classes, just elsewhere, being online all the time? Oh, okay. All right. Well, just keep, hopefully you get from my personality, we've been hanging out for 7 weeks now, that I'm totally open. I mean, I have a very, definitive opinion about some things, but also I'm totally open to new ideas and trying out new things. And especially now that we're going into this second wave and lockdown for the second time. And I mean, this is where I do feel for you guys. I mean, this just sucks. University is not supposed to be this, virtual thing. So you got the short stick on that one, that here it is, this shit happened to you while you're supposed to be having, what I think a lot of people experience university as kind of the best time in their life. So, because after school, you got to go work for the rest of your life, and that kind of is less interesting, or hopefully you find something great to do. All right, enough of that. So let's, so I'm open. So give me more feedback or ideas, and let's practice some innovative ideas. I think I did a post. I'm actually judging and mentoring for a hackathon this week. There's a international study program is trying to generate new ideas around how to deliver education, and so this is exactly one of the challenges that this group of, I think they're like 80 people, are all coming up with these different ideas, and I'll be judging them on Friday. I'll be interested to see what they come up with tomorrow. But but part of it is this. It's like, so you've got this objective of creating platforms and systems and solutions and ideas to educate folks, but the qualitative nature, how to keep folks engaged and interested, so that they don't disappear on you, because you're a bit of a captive audience. But I think that's really short-sighted if I think, oh, you've got to be in this class, I'm taking attendance, and some shit like that. It really has to be, okay, you're the customer. If you had a choice, that's the way us professors, instructors should be thinking about this, is that you could go do your laundry or walk the dog or do something else. And if there weren't a penalty for doing that, would I keep your attention, or would you go somewhere else? And that's essentially part of this challenge that's going on. And I take that as well for this class. How do we keep you interested? All right, so let's go into what we're going to do today. So let's, as a starter kit to react to what you were just saying, let me try to do this in the next, we'll do maybe a few slides and then maybe like 3:40-ish. Let's take a break and not go too long. Let's go little smaller bites of doing stuff. Take a break, come back. So maybe more breaks. And break this up a little bit. So this is the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. You know, what's going on and how are we doing? And so thanks for some of that feedback. Please give me more as it comes along. The next is just, I think I got a new little toy here. I think I can do, I can take a poll. I'm going to ask you a question. I do this. That's stupid. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it a different way. You know how to raise your hand in the class, right? You have a little hand thing. How many of you, yeah, Maria, right. I still have my hand, right? How many of you, let me get all your faces up here. And be honest, of course. Of course, you be honest. How many of you are actually reading the book? Raise your hand. Okay, you people who aren't showing your video, just do the hand raise button thing if you don't want to turn your video on. So is anybody reading the book? Wow. Okay. So you didn't read the book. Did you like open the PDF at least once and like, raise your hand. I opened the PDF once and I saw that a book exists. Okay. And do you find, and if somebody could answer chat, who's chatting with me? Iskender, yes. Yes, what? You opened the book or you read the book? You can respond in chat if you would like, or you can talk, your choice. Do you find that the information in the slides and my discussion, you believe that that's adequate? No judgment in the question, by the way. You think that that's going to be enough for you to capture the information? Opened it. Good. That's a good start, Extender. So someone's going to answer me that one. That's a bit of a complex question. Do you think that, or maybe I'll just make it a simple question. Do you think that the presentation that I give you and the slides, to look at that is enough to capture what I'm trying to teach you? Raise your hand if you think that's the case.
I would not say so, but then we have additional readings we do just on our own while preparing the projects and etc. Some like newspapers we have and some other additional things related to the things we are discussing here, and therefore this is enough. But I would not say just the PowerPoint worth the class.
Okay.
And I think we all have opened the book preparing for the quiz, so it was quite important too.
Yeah.
Maybe no.
I didn't get that feedback just now. Did I miss that? I don't think. Okay. I would struggle with this one a little bit. I think that if you can get and you understand what I'm talking about, I think that's fine. But I do think that you would just flipping through, not reading the book, but just flipping through it. And then if you see a section that you just simply don't understand, and it's the same section that I highlighted, then you should read that section. Or not necessarily read that section. And that's, Maria, maybe that's your point. You go elsewhere. Maybe there are other, like watching a 5 or 10-minute YouTube video on a particular topic is much more informative than struggling if reading isn't your best mode of learning. This is something that I'm trying to break away from. But historically, I've kind of gone through and used this book as a mode of sharing basic content. But I think if I'm clever, at least a little more clever, then I break away from that and find more fragmented pieces from different sources that collectively give you what you're looking for. Okay, that was a selfish question. That was kind of for me, not for you. Where am I? Back to my screen share. Excuse me, I have a new monitor being ordered to help facilitate this online. My laptop is inadequate. Selling to consumers. This kind of preceded that me jumping into this thing is like, so how are you guys capturing the important elements from these chapters? And so I'm not going to belabor all of this, other than what I do try to do in these summaries is to come back and say, these are the main elements that you should certainly have in your head. And you're going to keep using these again and again. And I think I see you guys are a little bit challenged sometimes on some of these activities that I'll go through, and they're always related back to something that's in this book. And this selling to consumers, this basic concepts of marketing, you might feel like this is a marketing class or even a business management class. And as I've told you guys before, that I'll say again and again, is that it's all the same. If you have to have, a clear understanding of what your business is, what your strategies are built on, using things like differentiating tools like SWOT analysis, but it helps us very narrowly and focused on what it is that we're trying to do and what's important in terms of prioritizing our initiatives. And so here, this chapter is just further emphasizing in the context of selling, not just what my business is, but now my activities to sell to those consumers. How am I organizing these thoughts? So 4 P's of marketing, you guys know those. So I'm going to look possibly in a midterm to ask you to describe those things to me. And I'm not going to tell you how I might ask them, but and this is, I'll talk about this later, because we're going to do, the midterm is next week, by the way. And at the end of this discussion today, we're going to talk about, did I say that? Yeah, the midterm. I'm going to give you a midterm review. I'm telling you exactly what's going to be on the midterm, because this isn't a cat and mouse game. I can tell you exactly, but you just have to understand those things that I'm going to tell you. But I'll do that at the end of the class. Back to selling to consumers, these were the things from last week that, and again, I'll review these again at the end of the class because it'll be on your midterm. So it's on the midterm review. But the basic marketing strategies and segmentation, and you have to, and Abdel asked the questions, I believe, last week about shopper and a buyer. These 3 of the different categories, of the types of users, the behavior of the user coming to me or who I'm going after, I have to differentiate them, because how I set up my advertising or my messaging and my web page, like a landing page. We're going to talk about this more after the midterm, because you're going to apply it to your project, but I want you to understand this concept of a buyer. What's a buyer? What's a shopper? What's a browser? I'm going to throw this out. Can somebody summarize or give me an example, or maybe even just tell me which picture applies to which category?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, can you describe the difference between a buyer, a shopper, and a browser when I'm thinking about?
Oh, a browser, I'm sorry, allow me to talk. A browser just serves but has no aim, no target, does not buy anything or like end up having stuff. The shopper
That
only.
would, excuse me for interrupting, might
Go ahead.
buy something, but they're not, their intention is not to buy something, right?
All right, thank you for the clarification. The shoppers are trying to distinguish between some items together, like comparing the quality of this company to that company. And finally, sorry, what was the last point? Shoppers, buyers.
On the slide,
Oh, and buyers. I'm not using the site, but like, okay, I see, I can see. The buyers are the ones who end up with the shop, the products, the goods they had. Like they are the target. They just go immediately to the target. They know. They ignore all frictions, just immediately to the product they need, and they leave.
very good, very good. Yeah, simply that, right? And we just need to think about those and make sure that our site is responsive to those behaviors, because it's that specific behavior that if I'm doing it properly, I'm accommodating their needs and wants. And so I have a higher probability of capturing them and getting a sale. And so an example would be in a buyer, it could be a one-click buy now button. They saw what they are looking for. They know that's what they want. Boom, I hit the one button, boom, and it's being shipped to me and I get it tomorrow morning. Or I can pick it up this afternoon. The shopper, these are product comparative data. So I have two laptops next together and I have the different specifications to include price, product availability. Can I get it today? Or is it, if I ordered it now, I get it in a week? Is it, does this one have a 25% discount? What are the attributes of this product and how do I compare those? And then the last one is the browser. And of course, you want to accommodate a browser because you have a lot of things, but you're the seller. So how can I get their attention? And this is where call to actions, 25% off if you buy in the next 5 minutes, or you could have an app on your phone that sends a notification to you. You're just walking in front of McDonald's and it says, hey, free, small fries with your Big Mac, or whatever. But there's something that you're not intending to do something, but I can trigger you to actually take an action. So that's good. That's exactly right. And then the online tools, we're going to go into this much further more, but this is introductory. So SEO, search engine optimization, it's important that we know that because the dominant way that people get to content online is through search. This is changing, by the way. It's coming down. It used to be that this was essentially the way people got to content. But now we have embedded content. So maybe you're watching a YouTube video and then in the YouTube video, it says, hey, click here for, more information about this thing or for a 25% discount. So you can actually start to interconnect ways, paths that people can come to you. But to know that search engine optimization, when somebody types in something in the search field, what shows up on that top page in terms of page rank results, relevant results to that particular search is a very highly developed business, where before people didn't even think about it 15 years ago, but now you have search engine optimization experts. And in the review, I've given you a link to learn more about that, and you'll have to learn more about it, not necessarily for the midterm, but for your projects. Search engine marketing, this is paid advertising. We went through some examples of Google ad network, where you place an ad with Google, and then Google as an ad broker will place that ad in different locations based on how much money you're paying and what are the criteria for where you wanted those ads to be placed. Could be a geography, could be even for Facebook as an example. They have a behavior model where you could look at a psychographic attributes and target ads to that type of community. Also, they include geographic fencing, so you're not sending ads to somebody in the United States if that's not your target audience. That's just wasted money and energy. But search engine marketing and understanding that in better detail is very important. Unfortunately, I think you saw the message. Tomasz Bartek is not able to join us today. He was our guest speaker, but this is his life, as identifying the different platforms to place ads, if not directly, because he also places ads directly, and then how much money is he spending to get after different markets as they're expanding beyond the Czech Republic throughout Western Europe to sell contact lenses and eyewear. And that's a multi-million-dollar business, and he's responsible for all of it. And so this is his expertise. Essentially, they have brick and mortar shops also, but the majority of their revenues are coming from online. And then the last thing in this chapter was a bit about tools, and specifically customer relationship management tools. You've heard about CRM before, probably. Salesforce, if you guys have worked for larger organizations, you might have run into this product, this company that provides a cloud-based CRM system. There are many out there, there are thousands, but Salesforce is probably the largest, the most comprehensive globally, Salesforce.com. And so if you're in this business, you would definitely want to look into and become at least very familiar with the features, the capabilities of customer relationship management in Salesforce. Just as an example, whether or not you use Salesforce, just it's essentially the kind of a best of breed platform. But you can see that it provides for capturing customer information, including in your calendaring, the timing for sending out notifications. Maybe their subscriptions are about to expire, or maybe you can have built into your system tracking of what kind of services they use from your business. And if they're not using all of the services that they're paying for, or that they could pay for new services, a CRM system could identify that and then trigger out notifications to say, hey, I see you're not using this. Why don't you use that? An example could be, I don't know if I gave this last week, but Duolingo is pretty good. If you are using their app to learn a language and they haven't seen you sign on in the few days, they send you an email notification and say, hey, we miss you. We haven't seen you in a while. Are you too busy? Or, hey, do you want to talk to one of our consultants? Or, they're looking for different ways to instigate and maintain engagement so that you stay as a customer with them. They don't want to, lock you in. They want to say, hey, you came here to learn a language. How's it going? Or could we do something different? So these are the things that customer relationship management systems provide. And of course, this is critical when you're talking about scaling a solution or an opportunity, because you can't have people looking in the database to see what your customers are doing one by one. We want to leverage technology to affect these situations more generally and more efficiently. So here's I don't know, do you guys have any questions about selling to consumers? I think it's kind of, you experience this, you're consumers. So I'm just, I think, presenting it to you in a structured way. Selling, we're going to go over the next chapter, which is selling to business. That one I think is a little more difficult for most students because most of you have not worked in a large company and have not seen the need to use or leverage e-commerce solutions that facilitate the business-to-business transaction. And some of you have, you've already explained to me some of you're working for organizations, but this is one of these things that you just, as time goes by, you'll get more and more experience with more and more solutions. But mostly, I mean, I'm going to drag you back to this Porter's value chain of activities, because it's a good way to just structure, okay, these are the things that I'm trying to do in my organization. How are they related in terms of the flow of activities in my business processes? And then as well, what are my interrelationships with business partners and suppliers? And so supply chain management and those kinds of things come up. But this important concept to say, what is it that I'm trying to do? And that's where even some of your projects that are using, like Samsung, where you're in a large organization, I would expect to see you guys start to, and again, after the midterm, you're going to start to identify ways of really improving your business effectiveness, whether it's fixing a problem or going after an opportunity by leveraging e-commerce solutions, technologies. So I read through your guys's activities, and I generally, you guys are doing really well. I only expect to like kickstart this before the midterm, but in general, you guys have a very good idea of what it is you're trying to do. Mostly, by the way, not all, but mostly. I didn't get, and I don't know if I missed it, but I didn't get the unique selling proposition in this last activity. I didn't, and I don't want to, for sake of time, because I want to stick to this new promise of breaking out more quickly. Hold on, I got a message coming up here. Got it. Okay, now where was I? I'm not going to go through all of your guys' ideas, but I'm going to give you feedback online. I've given some of you a little bit of feedback, but I have to read some more. A couple of you turned them in late, and I'm not going to penalize you guys for not turning it in by last night. But do try to get them in the night before, because then it gives me time in the morning to read through it, so I can speak more intelligently by 3 o'clock about what you turned in, and give you more advice and input. But on this one, I didn't see. So what is special? This is the unique selling proposition, the USP. Hopefully you got this in your marketing classes, and it's just another way of saying, how do I differentiate myself? What's different about what I'm offering? And in your projects, I'm not getting that yet, because, and this is all the stuff, and you're going to get this after the midterm if you're not getting it yet, because we're really going to spend more time focusing on this projects after the midterm. But so you've had, oh, this is my business idea, this is my problem or my opportunity statement. You know, I think Samsung has too many issues when customers are trying to get customer support, post-purchase customer support. And so you could break those down into, you know, specific categories of problems, and then look for maybe different ways. Maybe it's a how-to video. Maybe it's so I'm giving Samsung some ideas here. You know, maybe it's a link to FAQs. Maybe it's a link to a blog on customers using that product, or maybe it's a quick, you know, either a document or a video to help a customer test and validate that in fact the product is broken, and then how can they, you know, expedite the return and repair of a product. But it's knowing that there's something unique and specific about how they plan to execute that they're going to be pushing on. That's their goal and their objective. For the My Food team, if it's you know, more eco-friendly, you know, farm to table, healthy food for people who are, you know, and then they have the profile of who is a typical buyer of this kind of food. You know, what is special about what they're doing? A lot of people are jumping into this bio game, but what is special about them? And it could be simply the way that they're packaging it, that it's easier to consume. It's easier to consume. I mean, like to get, you know, maybe they package it in like a meal package by day, or allowing them to put it in the freezer so they could buy it 1 week in advance or whatever. But there has to be something unique that they're doing, and then they can look for leveraging, you know, this e-commerce platform to distribute that message, and then to pull people through. And this is back to selling to consumers. Where are my customers in my funnel? And from awareness at the beginning through and converting them to attraction and engagement, and then review and decision to purchase, and then ongoing customer support, that I'm leveraging the proper tool at the right place, depending on where my customer is in their customer journey. The other thing I noticed in the total available market, some of you did a great job. You did a lot of research on where are they, who are they, and profiling the different psycho and demographic and geographic. But know that you can have some big numbers, but you have to be able to break it down into something that you can actually go after. So, and I think a good way of testing that is, if you think about, I'm going to create an ad for a specific user in a specific place who have a specific problem. How would I direct that? And I need to know those attributes. An example would be if, like, one of the teams were talking about, you know, targeting expats in the Czech Republic who have disposable income to buy services. I mean, that's a good start, but I mean, there's a lot more detail underneath that. You would need to know by region, how many are there of those kinds of expats. And one thing I would offer you guys is that, and I did say this to the team who I'm speaking of right now, if you had a problem when you're setting up your business opportunity or idea, make an assumption. I mean, this class is only 15 weeks, so we don't have time to answer all the questions. I want you to push on things a little bit, but I'm really wanting you to lean into the e-commerce part of it that you're going to start doing now. As we've talked about selling to consumers and now selling to business, you'll look at specific e-commerce solutions that are addressing specific problems. But as you come down this strategy discussion and you're like, hey, I don't know where that information is, well, just make up a number or whatever, but an educated guess, but just write it down and say, there's an assumption that for example, 30% of the expats in Prague have disposable income. And so if the number is, I think the numbers were something around 250,000 in the Czech Republic, and maybe 100,000 of them, and I'm making this one up, I don't know, are in Prague, and that 30% of them have disposable income that would be a target for our services, then now I've got 30% of 100,000, so that's 30,000. And then, now we're talking about, even though assumptions are built in there, I have an idea of what this real target market is. And then this also leads into what another team was doing a good job of this, My Food. They had already started to think about, and they actually wrote it down. They weren't just thinking about it. What are the costs and the benefit trade-offs? So how much is it going to cost for me to set up this idea or execute this e-commerce initiative? And then what's the benefit of doing that? So if you say to yourself, there are the 30,000 expats in Prague who are potential target for services, Well, you're not going to get all of them. So you also have to make an assumption. How many do you think you can get over time? Maybe 5 in the first week, 10 by the second week. I can get to 150 by the end of the first month, you know, whatever that you think that attraction and scalability could be. And then you have to say to yourself, well, how much is each customer worth? Are they going to buy one service from me? And when they buy one service, and I get 15% as an agent fee of that service, and this is back to the revenue model, except I think this particular service, it's a subscription service. So how much money do I get? How much money do people pay? Is it 200 crown a month for access to this database of services? Whatever it is, whatever the revenue model is, then I can say target audience, achievable target conversion from that audience times how much money I can make from them. And you're not going to make money for what, 6 months, 12 months, maybe 24 months, but over what period of time does this become a viable project that the return on investment is positive at least? And so if I'm considering Samsung, I would think about how, and I didn't see this in the Samsung write-up, what's the value of this problem to Samsung, that they're pissing off their customers because they have an inefficient customer service, post-purchase customer service process? What are they losing? And you don't know that number, and I'm guessing you can't get that number, but go make it up. You do know what their total revenues are. You could estimate that, you know, maybe 3% or 5% of the products have issues, some of it's user error. They just don't know how to use it. Some of it is the product really is broken and needs to be returned or replaced, whatever. But you take those numbers and then say, now what's that worth to the company? And that's a direct cost. And then there's an indirect cost that says the customer doesn't want to buy from them anymore. And then, so that's a future, maybe some annuity, and that might be an incremental cost. But the point here is that you have to quantitatively, specifically identify what it is that I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So that's hopefully that wasn't just preachy, and that was specific enough that you can imagine in your own projects that you got to get into the dirt, the specifics about not just the, oh, this is a great idea, but this is why I'm doing this. And now I've got something that there's a very smart man in Silicon Valley. His name is John Doers, who's the principal managing director of Kleiner Perkins, one of the largest equity investment companies in the world. And he says, measure what matters. It's the number one thing he teaches all the entrepreneurs and startup folks that come into his office that ask for millions, if not billions of dollars. And he says, measure what matters. Find the specific thing that, why am I doing this? I have to have numbers, and then I can manage my activities against those numbers. We'll talk about that a lot more in your projects, but this is the most important thing that I am looking for, and I'll get it out of you, I promise. It doesn't happen in the first couple go rounds, but eventually I'll get it from you. Okay. I'm gonna stop for a minute, and we're gonna if you have any questions, and if not, we're gonna take a little break. We're gonna follow the Benjamin model here of more breaks. Any questions on any of that? Okay, stay with me on.
Helpful.
Yeah, Maria?
It was quite helpful.
Okay, good. And I'll stay. I actually am a member of your teams. I don't know if I said that before, but I'm on your teams. So I'm not going to jump ahead of you, but in Slack, I'm going to be working with you probably more after the midterm, but helping each of your teams. Everyone should get an A on these. Really, I'm not joking, but you have to earn it. But and I'm on your team, so hopefully we'll all get A's if we're paying attention. All right, let's take 15 minutes, huh? We'll start up at 4 o'clock.
Perfect.
Have a nice break. All right, here we go. Welcome back. So here we are, a new chapter. This one's really easy, I think. Let me get my screen set up properly here. Okay. All right, here we go. This is why I think it's easy, and this goes back to what I was writing on that board, that the Einsteinian equation for business, revenue minus expenses equals profit. Very complex, I know, but that's what's going on here. And I think, this is where you have to think for your projects, even if your projects are consumer oriented. I'm going to ask you to, not now, we'll do this after the midterm, but I'm going to ask you to look for ways that you could organize your business idea or improve your business idea by leveraging B2B. So even if, again, if you're consumer oriented, you still have relationships, B2B relationships with your suppliers or your partners. And so you want to consider that, or even internally. I've got internal systems. Maybe it's an email system or it's a collaboration system. And I've introduced you guys, some of you, to Slack for the first time. So you consider like maybe Microsoft Teams or Google Suite, which used to be called Google for Work. We have these different systems that help us do things better, faster, cheaper, and we should always look for those opportunities. So here's a whole chapter that, and sometimes if you haven't read the chapter or you haven't thought about this, when you get involved into the details of how businesses run, it really gives you a migraine headache. You're like, what? I mean, it's like reading, I don't know if you've ever bought an electronics product that had the schematic inside of how everything was connected. Of course, the average person doesn't understand what the hell that thing is. And thanks to sustainability, they don't put that stuff in most of the products they ship to you. But you look at them and you're like, what? I mean, that makes no sense to me. It looks like some puzzle. But when you look at these architectural drawings or schematics on how things are built, that's what's you need to be able to have that level of skill as a business person, and you need to be that maniacal about details. Now, we only have so much time in the day. We have only so many resources in our brain, so we can't think of everything all the time, which is why I keep asking you to think about, the whole picture, but prioritize focusing on what's most important. But when you talk about B2B and you talk about all the things that are connected that make a business work, well, that's thought, it's cute doggy. You have to think about these connections and because at some level, a business has to have all those connections. For example, your bank. How do you get money into your bank? How do you get customers money out of their bank into your bank? That's not a little insignificant thing, right? I mean, but sometimes you might have gone to websites before. It doesn't happen so much anymore now that the third-party payment systems have improved. We'll talk about that in another time, but we have these solutions, these little point solutions of little applications that you can subscribe to that provide these different services that make all this connections and make your life much easier. And we're going to talk about those in this chapter, but the idea that you have to, especially we have one team, the My Food team, if you're going to start a business from scratch, you should have a big sheet of paper on the wall. And I did this when I started my first business, the tech business in San Francisco, I put butcher paper all over the wall, and I just wrote as soon as I identified something. This is my first kind of complex business to start. And so I had all these relationships between me and IBM and me and SAP, me and all these other business partners, and some were suppliers and some were banks and some was the HR department, human resources. That at first I hired an HR person, and then I got rid of that person and I outsourced it to an agency. But then I had to connect my business to that agency, and I had to connect my employees through my business to that agency. So so this is just the things that you have to worry about. And so maybe you're not an entrepreneur, maybe you're not going to start your own business, but you're coming to the university because you want to go do something, I suppose. And whatever you're going to do, whether you're a department manager or running a division or starting a business, it doesn't matter. You have to be thinking at this level of detail, because it's from that detail that determines what we call them requirements. Whatever I decide to go do, whatever my system is, it has to be able to do these things. For example, collaboration, online collaboration, like Slack. Slack has to be able to load up a document because maybe we're working on a project together, and Slack has to let third-party guests sign into my channel, because maybe I'm working with people who are part of my business, part of my company, but maybe I'm working with people who are outside of my company. So again, the point here, and I'll get into the slides, but don't get lost in the detail, but know that the detail is that's where things happen. So keep a holistic view, identify what areas of the business I'm targeting, and then specifically know exactly how that particular activity works. And then I can look for solutions in the marketplace to possibly employ and install and execute to provide a service that does what's on this slide here: increases my revenue or decreases my expenses, because it's going to do one or the other, or maybe both. But because if it doesn't do that, then I'm wasting my time, and I'm not running a business, but it's a hobby, as they say. Here, the learning objectives it's essentially to have you walk through. It's the purchasing process, logistics, and other support activities. Could be HR, could be finance. It could be facilitating the marketing, sales and marketing, and distribution. So here we go, this chart again. I see it keeps coming back. Porter's value chain of activities. I was just saying this, but here's the chart, so it helps me organize those things. This I've provided you, it's got links. I went and I looked around, and I would highly recommend, if you have the time before the midterm, you should click on these links, because they're short videos, introductions to these ideas, because and this is really for you. When I started getting involved in technology and doing work, we didn't have the number of applications that we have available now. I mean, we have millions and millions of applications, but before, back in the dinosaur era, when I graduated from university, there were not so many applications, and they were typically proprietary, dedicated to like an IBM system or Sun Microsystems or Hewlett Packard or Digital Equipment. Half of those companies don't exist today, but so that's the changing nature of the changes. But what hasn't changed is exactly what these things do. So ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. Some of you, I think, told me you have experience with SAP. It's a German-based company that is the worldwide leader in ERP systems. So you need to understand that ERP, it's terribly complicated, but the idea is very simple. They just automated the entire business process. So if somebody is going out to bid to buy something from the purchasing department, that purchase forecast in the budget has already been delivered to them in the system from the finance department that was already approved by the board of directors or executive committee that allocated the funds for that particular project. So it's not somebody, running down the hallway and saying, hey, John from finance, how much money do I have? I forgot for that project to, develop a new product. It's right in the system. And then maybe there's some modifications to that project and that can be made in the system. And then it gets populated back out to all those affected players. The ERP systems have provided tremendous efficiencies to organizations and I am way overgeneralizing because it's all of the complex. You think about the hundreds of thousands of people that work for any one firm, like Amazon as an example, or IBM as an example, or General Electric, or any big company, Vodafone. Hundreds of thousands of employees are all affected by this system, and thinking now that the CEO, the executive team of an organization, can now manage all of that business, not by having meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings, because it's all in the system. So now they have meetings, but the meetings are to talk about strategic things or to handle issues that are outside the norms that have already been defined within the systems that they set. They set those norms. So ERP it's huge, very important, and we'll mix it up a little bit in the class if your projects specifically require or could be improved by looking at an ERP system. So that's just one example. I'm not going to go through all of these like that, but so the CRM, I talked about that earlier, customer relationship management systems, SCM, supply chain management systems. I mean, this is, if you remember from your project management class or your, I don't know if you had economics, probably project management, you talked about just-in-time delivery. So Skoda doesn't have 1,000 or 10,000 tires in a warehouse next door to their manufacturing plant. They have just the tires that are needed that day for the 50 or 75 cars that are rolling off the assembly line. How does that happen? It happens because Skoda, like any large automobile manufacturing company on the planet, uses a supply chain management system so that the suppliers are connected. Continental Tire, as an example, they're connected to Skoda. So they can see when Skoda's inventory of tires drops down below some threshold, probably the threshold of what they would need over a 3-day period of manufacturing cars. And when it goes below that threshold, boom, electronically, magic, message gets sent to the Continental Tire Company, and the Continental Tire Company puts some tires into a truck and run them right over to Skoda. So Skoda doesn't have to hit the red button and stop production because they don't have enough tires. And you think about the thousands of parts that exist in a typical automobile today from suppliers all over the world. This is how it's managed effectively. And this is e-commerce. E-commerce. These systems are through APIs and EDI, electronic data interchange. We're sharing information and actions between these systems that are running these organizations so that the people can sit back and say, wow, that's working the way it should. And then the people react to when shit hits the fan and something doesn't behave the way it's supposed to behave. COVID, by the way, was a great example of testing these systems. As you might have experienced, you go to the store and you can't buy things that you were able to buy before because the distribution system got all jacked up as soon as everybody had to stay home. So the supply chain changed considerably. And so all of these large organizations, Tesco, Bauhaus, Hornbach, all of them had to go back into their supply chain management systems and modify the variables so that they could maybe look for alternative sources and react to the quick depletion of inventory because all of us ran to the stores and started hoarding toilet paper. So you can see that these systems, they help us. And by the way, if you didn't have a supply chain management system, you were dead in the water. If you were a large organization, of course, you wouldn't exist today because you wouldn't be efficient enough to compete. But you can't react to a COVID situation without at least having some of your systems managed with best of breed supply chain management systems. And so links to other things, Office, VoIP, voice over IP. It was one that most of you missed, or 50% of you missed on the skills assessment test. It's essentially a phone. It's like me talking to you right now. This is VoIP, except like WhatsApp would be VoIP. If you had like a call, a phone call, but VoIP in an office, you can have a phone, typically, I mean, different brands, but like a Cisco phone, like hold it to my ear and I could dial the phone number, and it's going over the internet to another device on the other end of the connection, to another IP address, to another device. It could be a phone like my Cisco phone, or it could be a digital phone. It could go through an internet service provider to a mobile phone, all different ways of being connected. But we use these because, and this is part of the ergonomics, this is my relationship to the device. It still is in some business settings more effective ergonomically than I have a device like a physical phone, old school phone, if you will, by design. The other two are the AI as a service. So you can have IBM Watson, that if you watched the video from the TED Talk, I introduced that. This idea of we have cognitive computing, that I have these capabilities that I can pay for services so that the smartest computer, or one of the smartest computers on the planet, that can think and make recommendations on what actions to take, could be medical, could be, you know, how to get from A to B, could be maybe coming up with a better recipe for food. IBM's used this as an example, actually, for chefs to make recommendations on more different combinations of food items on a menu based on taste and experiences. Whatever, the point is that we now have access to that, and we would look for opportunities to leverage AI. And even in your projects, you could consider this. You don't have time to like break it down into exactly how you might implement it, but from a general concept, if you could maybe attach an AI, you could imagine attaching an AI system to your, for example, customer support for Samsung. Maybe the AI system could read through the problem statement that the customer put in the chat. I could connect that to a chat bot, and then it could make a suggestion as to what is a resolution to that problem without involving a human. So this is a very important slide, and whether now or later, I do want you to click on those, and I think you'll find yourself better off, that you'll at least, it'll validate for yourself that said, hey, I know that, I've used those before. Or you'll go, oh, I didn't know that. And at least it'll have tickled your brain a little bit, that because I find, for example, in my business, I do all of these things. And I don't do them because I'm looking for the next shiny thing to go play with. I do it because I have to use each one of those things as different components to my business so that I can effectively execute and create a competitive advantage, so that I'm at least one of the winners in the market, and I don't get blown out by somebody who learned how to do something better, faster, cheaper. Are there any questions about that generally? I don't know if I would expect it, because it's kind of just blah, I'm just telling you something, yeah. The other thing that's quite relevant here is on the left-hand side, this is where client server comes back into play. Where is the action? Because you can buy all of these software products that run on your laptop. But I mean, would you do that? Maybe you have some business case that says why you would do that, but they all now, as of the last 5 to 10 years, run in the cloud, and you rent them just like it's like it's utility computing. I'm just paying for what I use. I use a lot, I pay more. I use less, I pay less. It's a lot better than buying something and parking it in the garage and only driving it once in a while. Like it's like Uber. This is like Uber for applications. But this concept of client server is important. So you need to think about what devices you are using to get access to those services. And then also you have to think about and maybe they provide this as a service to think about it for you, but you need to think about it because you would have to pay for those services. How are these systems connected to your other business partners that you might be doing work with, or your suppliers, or your customers, or your employees? It depends on what it is you're doing. But now this is where as they say, the tire meets the road. This is the punchline to everything that I've been talking about, why technology is so important, because now we're leveraging technology and you can't get away with coming up with an answer or understanding it without at least having some basic understanding of some of the pieces and the parts, the devices, the networks, and the servers. And then now the applications that run on top of all of those things, and how do they get work done? And that's the fun part. That's why, quite frankly, that's why you have to pick something you want to do in your life that's fun, because who would do this for a living if you didn't like it? I mean, you wouldn't. You just shoot your head off. You're like, I can't stand it. So you have to love it. And strangely, I do. I like different kinds of businesses, and so I love the brain game of like going into a situation that's all screwed up and then trying to help reorganize it, and then thinking about how to apply technology to fix the biggest problems first, and then just work our way down until we're running a smooth operation. That's what this is. It's a big game. Whee! So, the rest of the slides for this chapter are just this. I'm just reinforcing it's revenue minus expenses equals profit. No matter what organization I'm working with, I'm just looking for ways to improve it. And so I talked about supply chain already and the value chain. Where am I providing value? How can I improve the value? So you have to keep your eyes open and look for every opportunity. It's like maybe the gold rush in the mid 1800s. When the early gold rush folks would come to Miller's Camp. That's where it was in Northern California, outside Sacramento. And literally the guys at the beginning, they would just look down on the ground in the river, and there was like gold just shining. That was at the beginning. Of course, that didn't last very long, but they would just go and they'd pick up gold. And that's kind of what you should think about in terms of your business operation. You're looking around the organization and you're being very critical. You're thinking, how does this, how do they get stuff done? And then think to yourself, could I do that better, faster, cheaper? Maybe, you know what? I've seen that every time we work on a project that we end up with multiple versions of documents. And everyone's complaining that they're not working with the right version, or they edited an older version, or they can't find the document. And then you could imagine, oh, well, hey, you ever heard of that Slack thing? Or Google Drive that's got the version control and where everyone collaborates on the document together? I mean, these are obvious things because you already know about them, but this is this idea that I could imagine this being different. Don't be a monkey or a cow and come to work day after day after day and sitting in the same disaster where everyone's complaining about the same problem over and over again. Be the person who says, hey, here's an idea. We could do this different. Let's try this out. We don't have to roll it out to the whole company. Just the three of us, let's try and see if it works. And if it works, then you can, roll it out to more of the operation to have a bigger impact. But this is the level of detail that you have to pay attention to and be quite frankly, a bit excited about, like, oh, hey, I could do this. I could do this better. This is all of this stuff. I'm just going to clip through these. These are just, this workflow. This is the typical business process for purchasing. And I don't know if you've been involved in purchasing, whether you've done it in a small organization, but this idea that I do an RFQ, a request for quote, or request for proposal. When you get involved in a big company, you'll run into this. It's very formal processes, and the intention is to try to create quality, really good quality, so that when I buy something that's complex, I get something that meets my requirements. And that's what this system is all about. I mean, when I graduated from university, I had no idea what the hell this was. But then when I started working with IBM and my customers, we would do these complex projects and proposals. I think you call them vendor quotes, or you have a different term in Europe, but whatever. But the proposals and bidding and this negotiation back and forth, all of this is very complex. And we actually started in the 1990s. We've developed an online system with Safeway that helped us as suppliers to Safeway. That's a big retail grocer in the United States, like Tesco, although in fact larger than Tesco in the US. And we were one of their premier suppliers. We were very fortunate to earn their business, but then we developed these online systems that helped all of these steps. Because if I could do that for them, it increased the amount of work that we could do and decreased the time that it took them to work with us to get what they needed. It was fantastic. And you know, we're not smart. We're just looking around and say, hey, this has got to be a better way of doing this than, you know, everyone getting in their cars and running over to Safeway headquarters and drawing on the boards. I mean, sometimes you have to do that, but for like just the basic processes of how we work together, push that stuff online. And we were the first ones to do it, and we kicked our competitors' ass. They had no way of competing with us because all of the history of those relationships, after we went 1 project to 2 projects to 3 projects. I mean, we were doing hundreds of projects with Safeway, just Safeway. That was just one of hundreds of customers, and we're doing it all online. And it made our company run more efficiently, and it made our customer delighted because they weren't having to chase their vendors around. I mean, actually, they chased the other vendors around, but they didn't have to chase us around. And believe me, we got more and more business. Every time they looked for an opportunity to give us another project, they'd give it to us because they knew that we were managing it online and it was much more efficient. And they weren't having to call John up to find out where the hell is that delivery, or, you know, what are the specifications for that last proposal. It was all there. You just click on it. We just give them an extranet access to our database. They can go and look at all the data. It was their data. It was just projects that we were working on for them. But that's really a great example of just not being clever, just keeping your eyes open and looking for opportunities to improve and have a competitive advantage. Of course, now things have evolved much more, so you can't do something simple like that and expect to be differentiated. You have to do something like that just to stay in business. Now, Grainger is one that's referenced in this book, and it's they're really a premier provider in the US for electronic parts and stuff like that. It's B2B. So if I'm running a shop that I'm building something that requires wiring or something related to those resources in my production line, I almost will always have Grainger as one of my suppliers. So I asked this question, what do you think, looking at that page, if hopefully it's not too much of an eye chart, but do you have a sense for what kind of customers visiting? If I steal from those 3 types from my selling to consumers? So I have my shopper, my browser, or my buyer? Who am I what am I?
Browser.
And what makes you say that?
Because so this is a starting page. We don't see the cards, or we do, I don't know. We don't see any prices. We don't see any buttons like buy it now, or at least we don't see them because it's too small. But
Right.
there are categories, but there are no particular products you would be able to press immediately buy this and you would be forward to the cart.
Okay, so I'm going to kick out a buyer. I don't have buyer here. They do react to a buyer, but not on this page. So that's, and it's the page that's important. So you're right there.
So I have a question. I'm sorry. Can't we say that it's a buyer as well? Because like, if I'm a buyer and I know already the stuff that is on this website, as it's presented up to here on right corner, product search box. So I would simply immediately type what I need, or I could go to product categories on the left hand side, where I can look for what I need exactly, click on it, like on this section, and then I'll be redirected to another place or link, and then I can purchase the product. What do you think?
I think that that's also the case. Yes, you in fact, I know better because I know what's beyond this page. So I know that they do service the buyer in terms of that buy now, boom, and they do. But I think to Maria's point, it's not the dominant behavior on the front. So for example, what they do have, again, not here, but when you sign on, you see what you've bought before, and you can click on that to buy it again with one click.
Yeah,
So
I see. So there is a,
remember. Go ahead, please.
oh yeah, I just wanted to say that there is a way to shorten the customer journey for those who are buyers.
Could be even here, exactly. This is an old view, but right, I don't recall the current view, but you're right, you could, because you don't see it right away. You have to sign in.
Yeah, so
so here's another, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, the every step which makes the customer journey longer, on every step you lose the customers, but if your customers are browsers, it doesn't matter for them, I think.
Right. Every step. This is, by the way, if any of you have any experience with engineers, civil engineers, typically, they have one thing in their toolbox. It's called a time motion study that they do when they're looking at large operations or organizations, and they say, how much time does somebody spend doing something? And what they end up doing is and this is to Maria's point, so personally, I don't want the friction, as Abdel, you said before, I don't want the friction in that activity. I want to take it out as much as possible. But the other side of that is, if I'm responsible for architecting, a relationship between me and a supplier, or evaluating whether I'm going to choose a supplier, I could consider how much time is wasted in this version versus another version. And surprisingly, when you add up the amount of time people waste, and it's negative word, but I think a better way of looking at it maybe is a positive statement to the same point is how much time could be saved if you did it this other way. For example, one thing that's not here, do you guys notice if you go to a selling site and sign up, and you go back to that selling site and you're automatically logged in?
Sometimes, yes, like Amazon, for example.
Huge, right? Who wants to enter their passcode again and again and again and again.
A question comes
And
up
it's very
actually.
very difficult IT task to manage it, because it can be pretty difficult to control it. But then it opens the greatest opportunity for like MailChimp, because they request it, and for other like advertising tools. So it's huge. It's very important actually, but it's so difficult sometimes with some platforms, especially with LMS, for example.
Are you also talking about, I'm sorry, are you also talking about data capturing, sir? So for example, when you are logging into email, I frankly speaking from my side, I would waste time. It's not efficient, time efficient just to every time write my email, then my password because it's long. So are you talking about like data capturing? So I would just like immediately sign in once I like click Gmail or Microsoft Office, for example.
The total answer is yes. It's any activity that I force the user to perform that I can automate. And by the way, I have to be careful, right? I have security to deal with. There's a reason I'm asking for a passcode. I want you. I don't want your little brother walking up to your laptop and then launching a bunch of websites and it automatically logs you in, and then he starts posting crap about you on all of your social media, you know, because it thinks that because it's connected to your laptop, and then therefore it in its security protocol has confirmed that it's you, whether it's you or not, you know. So we have these considerations to worry about, and then you think about the risk on the supplier side as to whether or not that's worth preventing some of that unauthorized access. But so I'm going to take that off the table. Okay, let's presume that our systems, whether it's facial recognition, fingerprint scanning, that it refreshes frequently enough that if it is your little bratty brother that got to your laptop, that it requires you know him to re-authenticate some simple way. But the point is that we're getting away from, and we're going to be completely away from passwords. This is crazy, and it's crazy because it's the friction that it puts on us doing what we want to do is tremendous. And that's one little thing, but we're on the cusp of this now, that we would want to consider how do we leverage, you know, automated sign-on facial recognition systems. I don't know if you're using them on your phones, but like accessing banking systems, I haven't entered a passcode for 6 months onto my banks in the United States and here in the Czech Republic and in India. Thankfully, they're all facial recognition validated sign-ons. So as long as I have my mask off and I pull my phone up, boom, I'm in and I'm doing work. And talk about something that needs to be secure. So we know that it exists. So going back to Granger here, if you're coming back to the system and it automatically recognizes me, logs me in, and then presents me with the options that are based on my behavior, and again, it's not here on this screen, but it very well could be, this is what your last purchases were. I know I've used AI or machine learning, or I have some algorithm that I wrote in the background that says, you know what, you buy, you know, 10 pallets of 8-gauge cable at the beginning of every month. You know, I'm not an idiot. I'm going to set up a system that automatically notifies you at the beginning of every month, here, this was your order. Push here to execute it, or make a couple modifications because this month might be a little different, and send it out. Or even better yet, and this is for very tight partnerships with suppliers, have their system managing, their ERP system managing the inventory, and through EDI, electronic data interchange, boop, sends a notification to Grainger and says, hey, I'm running out of 8-gauge cable, refill my inventory. And if I've got it where I've got supply chain management working at this level, then the physical human beings are gone they're from the equation. They're only back in on the equation if something happens like COVID or you know, there's some supply chain problem that maybe they can't get enough copper to, you know, from their suppliers to get enough cable to meet the demand of whoever the purchasing element is. But the point is that we're handling exceptions. We're not handling regular work. I was doing some research actually for a talk I gave yesterday on the future of education and learning, and I flipped the conversation a little bit, and I went into, well, the future of learning is really based on the future of work. And if you look at the forecast of jobs, the production manufacturing industry is down 27% over the last 10 years, and service industry is up about 35%. So, and this is, and then when you dig into the details, what's happening? What's happening is all this automation is going on that you see on this slide, these relationships between these companies, and they're repurposing these employees, right? They're either clever enough to get up the food chain, providing more knowledge-based skills within the organization, or they're getting laid off because they don't have a job. And this is not an insignificant thing. These are huge numbers globally. But that's why governments need to get involved in terms of developing their programs around education. But for business people, you and I, in the scope of this class, this is all about looking for improved efficiencies and relationships. Whatever your projects are, you'll think about these things. Some of you more than others, but you'll think about the relationship between in your supply chain. How are you, not supply chain, in your value chain of activities? What is it? What is the activity, and how are you considering the efficiency of executing that relationship? Here's an example of the state of California providing services. So this is the G to C, government to consumer, government to constituent. And how does California provide these services online? Again, this is like an eye chart, but this is how it worked physically. And think of the, you know, I was going to say hundreds or thousands of, but it depends on the size of the organization. It could be tens of thousands, it could be hundreds of thousands of people not hundreds, probably not so much, maybe tens of thousands of people doing these activities. And boom, when you implement systems to do these things, and now considering that we have so many solutions available, so many applications, so many platforms providing all of these different capabilities, it all disappears. I mean, it doesn't disappear, it all gets converted to some systematized process that's managed by applications. That's why that, you know, you ask Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or any of these folks who have run these large businesses based on tech, they say programming is the new superpower, because you're essentially taking the best practice of what somebody does, like the Einstein, right? You can find the Einstein in any industry, go have an interview with them, follow them around for a year, and then write a program that tries to mimic as much as possible what this person does. And as good as you're able to do that, and in fact, that's what SAP is. SAP is essentially best practices for how to run a large, complex organization. And then they just wrote a program to do it. And when you plug it into an organization, boom, they can knock out 25% of their staff. Wow, talk about a value proposition. And by the way, I'm not bullshitting you. Following an ERP implementation, you can predict 12 to 24 months later, there's going to be a huge layoff. Now, they have political words for this. They repurpose the employees and blah, blah, whatever. That's bullshit. They're gone. Those jobs are gone. That's what this chapter is all about. It's about how to increase revenues, decrease expenses, with a huge emphasis on decreasing expenses, because that's where this goes. You guys know what RFID tags are. If you ever run out of a store with one on and you didn't pay for something, beep, beep, beep. Could be that. But also, we use RFID tags to manage our products as they go through the supply chain. So that's it. It's essentially, it's just the buzzwords: EDI, supply chain management, ERP. It's all but you know, I think you know this conceptually. You probably don't know maybe these different categories, but you should know these categories. You should at least understand why we do this, why we do it to make money, or save money or make more money. That's it. That's why we do this. So generally speaking, it's easy. Any monkey knows, can figure that out, but not any monkey can figure out exactly, has the discipline and the interest and the curiosity and the critical mind to look into the organization, whether it be organization of 1 or 50,000, and identify, wow, this is a big mess over here. And I think if I took the time and figured out what the hell's going on over here, I could probably find some way to automate or implement some technology, some e-commerce-y stuff to help improve my efficiencies and effectiveness. And essentially, it's to create a competitive advantage. And that's what this whole class is about. Okay. I'll open it up for questions. I suppose there aren't any. I shouldn't say that, I guess. But do you, Benjamin's like, hey, it's time for a break. Which it is. That's a motivation not to ask a question, I guess. Huh? Okay, so go away, come up with a question, ask me when we come back, and then we're going to spend the last amount of time just telling you what's on the midterm. So I'll see you at 5, maybe a couple minutes after 5. Peace out. All right. Welcome back. Let's see who I got here. Okay, I'm going to burn through these. I will stop. If any of you raise your hand or tell me you would like to discuss something more fully, but I think we've gone through everything. You're not going to see any surprises here. So here's the intro, stuff from the book and how not to screw up your GPA. Let's see how we do. Okay. So here, let me give an overview for suggestion for studying. This is way too much to memorize. I'm not looking for memorization. I'm looking for application. So I want you to know the topics and the content in a way that would allow you to describe it in action. So as you saw in the midterm, the quiz, that I gave you questions, essay questions. I don't want you writing a book, but I just want you to answer the question directly with specific examples. If you want to get a good grade, just like from the quiz, you've got to answer the question. So if I'm asking for categories, that's a bit of a memorization game, because you got to think about, for example, user behaviors, a buyer versus a shopper versus a browser. You'd have to remember that. I mean, in some cases, I'll give you some words and then you're just going to have to apply them. In some cases, you're going to have to remember them. But I tend to shy away from the memorization game because I think it's not important unless it's a core thing that you should just have in your head, kind of like a math teacher making you memorize multiplication tables, because even though you can figure out how to do multiplication by being able to do it quickly, because it's in your head and it's rote learning, then it allows you to get on with more complex problem solving. And so that's kind of my approach. I think I've described that differently before, but that's what I mean. So your own experiences, class experience, if we've had, unfortunately, we haven't had guest speakers yet, but we will for the second half, and stuff I've posted in Slack. Make sure you have reliable Wi-Fi. You will be using your video for this test. Everyone will have their video on the whole time. That's a requirement. If you don't, then your test is not valid, and that would be bad for you, because I'm not going to do a makeup. So make sure that you have reliable internet. If for whatever reason you have an issue with that, then you need to let me know in advance of the class, not during class. During the midterm, you'll be asked to close all your browsers. Of course, this is a closed book test. I'm testing you, your knowledge, not Google's knowledge or your buddy's knowledge. Notes that I'm going to give you are general areas that I'm going to focus on for the midterm, but don't necessarily represent what I'm going to ask you. But you should understand all these things, okay? So these first couple slides are really, it's a review of the skills assessment test, because I think that it's important to have basic ICT knowledge, technical knowledge, that you're literate. I've highlighted a couple things that, of course, I'm going to lean on, but you should know basic technology. I'm not going to ask you if Tim Berners-Lee developed the browser, I promise. More basic technology. I've highlighted some things that in fact show up in chapter 2 and 3 on the tech side. Networking, systems, client server concepts, this ERP, I went into this exhaustively today a bit. CRM, customer relationship management, SCM, supply chain management. I didn't say this other one, and I wouldn't ask you on the test, but CAD and CAM, it's CAD/CAM. You'll hear, if you're in the manufacturing space, you would hear this. Every company that does manufacturing has computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing. It's an integral part of production, and it's so common that I call it out here if you're in that business, but I wouldn't ask you that on a midterm. But I didn't say that before, so I'm just saying that now. And these are the major trends of what's going on. You should know that this is the context of what business is in 2020. We had software as a service. This is from the TEDx talk as well. Everything's a service. Anything I need, whether it's system resources or an artificial intelligence application, or it's an ERP system, or it's a supply chain management system, all of this is available online as a service. This is a huge, huge, important baseline when we consider leaving the university and doing business and how that can affect us. So I would expect you to appreciate that and be able to articulate why that is so important, as well as all of these other things, that these are enablers, the technology, cloud computing, that we have resources all over the world providing infrastructure, application services, programming services, everything is available everywhere to everyone. This is our palette. This is our blank canvas that we get to go into the world in, and we need to be very careful as we can execute a business plan or an initiative, because we know that everyone else on the planet has access to these same things. So we have to do it in a very clever way to be competitive. So now we jump into the book. The e-commerce, what is it? The biggest thing that hopefully I've shaken out of you is the concept that it's just selling things. It's not B2C. It's not business to consumer. The next bigger bubble is, this is down at the bottom of the page, business to business. And then the largest bubble, as hopefully I reinforced today, is business process. We have all of these solutions available to improve our competitive advantage by leveraging e-commerce into business process, and also considering how I can connect those business processes to do business with other businesses. So these things can and are often related, B2B and business process. We talked about revenue models and how that's important. How do I make money? That's how we start identifying initiatives. And it could be by saving more money, driving expenses down. And the bottom line is that I am able to make more money. By the way, you're going to have all these slides, so you don't need to be taking pictures of this stuff or whatever. Just take notes if there's something that you think is you need to focus on. But so I'm going to upload these slides right after this class. The role of merchandising, we talked about the relationship between a value of a product and the weight of the product. We call that suitability. We talk about benefits of online versus traditional. And I say versus because it could be this or it could be that. But sometimes it's and we got that in Bob's things, tools and things. Is Bob had a choice of going online or not going online, but and going online and creating a new business. But why is that a choice? That's not necessarily the only choice. It's a choice, of course, but the choice could be that he goes online and creates a complementary environment, yet another channel to deliver his products and services, and his value add, his differentiator. Network structures, these are the connections. What does the internet provide that is different than before the internet? And one of them is this concept of a network effect. If I can create Facebook as an example, the more people who join Facebook, the more value everybody within the environment has. Same thing with like just a phone network back in the early 1900s. The more people who had a phone, the more value that phone network was. And the internet is the same. The more people that are connected, not everything operates this way. Some have diminishing returns. The more, for example, like a project team, if I have 5 people working together, they're very efficient. If I have 20 people working together, it becomes less efficient. They're spending all of their time trying to update each other and not actually getting work done. So we need to think about the internet and solutions that are that do take advantage of the network effect. Strategic business units and value chain of analysis of activities. These are the things that it's just a way of organizing work. And the last part, I didn't spend a lot of time focusing on this, but you certainly should recognize that there are some international elements of being online. These are technology, I'm not going to go through this. I'm not going to ask you about this software for web services, so don't worry about that part. Just know that that we have different operating systems. Some of you who are IT management degree seekers. You should know that, of course, but not for this class. Just know that they exist. But the top part, you certainly should understand. I'm pulling bullets from the section on web servers. We have servers that are providing all these services, and one of the servers is an email server, and it's providing services. And email is such a critical component of work that we all get used to do and live today. So we zoom in a little more detail on email systems and this particular issue, spam, and how that is related to its impact on our usage of sending and receiving mail. We have tools that allow us to manage our websites, our web pages, like link checkers. You've created all this content and all these links on your websites, and it gets more and more complex over time. How do we manage these things? And thankfully, as they've become more complex, we have tools that help us manage these environments to find problems and sometimes proactively fix them, or at least make them aware to you so that you can go fix them. More specific, basic technology. You guys need to work a little harder on your HTML and HTTPS knowledge of what those things are. And the concept of different kinds of servers. This is at the top up here. The point here is simply that we have different functions that have to happen that deliver the information and the end user experience. And we just need to know that these different kinds of systems exist in the back end. What really is going to make this stick in your brain when you're working on your project is you're going to be developing a schematic, a system design that would, and I'm not making you become architects, system architects, but you're going to, just like building blocks, you're going to have a description of all of the different resources that are required to drive your e-commerce initiative based on your unique project, and you'll see how these things fit together. But for the midterm, just know that we have different functions in this client server model, and that's how those services are delivered. So now we're into the business. Know the different revenue models and different examples of them. So there are these 6, and the need over time that we move from one to another, one model to another. It's based on what are the market environment. Maybe a competitor has just made their application free, and now they're simply using their relationship between you using that application and another application as their revenue model, and that other application is where they make their money. So you just know that businesses, entities are moving from one model to the next over time based on the competitive markets in which they exist. Revenue strategy issues. These are all important considerations. I talked quite a bit about channel conflict, that if you put something online, well, then maybe now they're not coming to the store. We talked about IKEA last time, I think, and how that affects if they're going to sell something online, then maybe you're going to be a buyer and you go and buy that one thing, but you're not exposed to all the other thousands of wonderful things that IKEA thinks you can't live without, and then therefore you don't buy those things. So it affects their overall business model when they go online, and in that case, in a very negative way. Selling to consumers. I've talked about this. I think the most important thing, I mean, all of this is important, otherwise I wouldn't put it on the slide, but you need to really understand the funnel, that we use that as a model to think about, where am I in my business relative to my relationship with my target market? And I don't have it here, but I should have put it here, is this customer journey. I have to think about the funnel generally, that if I have a total available market of 100,000, what's the conversion rate from advertising, marketing to them, and that they go from awareness to attention, and then they evaluate and they convert into a customer, they buy, and then I have the responsibility to maintain that relationship. If it's not transactional, and I want them to be to continue that relationship where they're buying from me over time. I'm retaining that client. You might remember from your marketing classes, for every dollar I can spend retaining a client, I will spend $8. This is a general marketing index. I will spend $8 to go get another customer. So it's very, relatively speaking, inexpensive to maintain and retain a customer, as opposed to going out and getting a new one. So we need to focus on that as part of the process in the funnel. But each one of my customers' behavior through that engagement to being a customer and then retaining that customer is what we call that customer journey. And we think about all the touch points that we have, whether it's online or face-to-face, maybe it's direct, or maybe it's through a business partner. We have to think about how that is maintained and managed as an overall brand. And e-commerce has tremendous capabilities when you think about the tools available to us and resources, as we'll keep talking about in this class. They're just being introduced right now. It's more specific information about the tools. We didn't go into them much, other than you should just know what Google ads are and Facebook ads. Essentially, it's a broker network of where you sign up and you have an ad, and then their added value is to place that ad in front of, depending on who you define as your target market, they put those ads in front of those customers. It could be a CPM. This is cost per thousand. And we call those impressions. So for every 1,000 users who see my ad, that's the CPM, and I'll pay for different ads, different prices for CPM, cost per thousand. That's different than a pay per click, where Google or Facebook will place an ad and you will only pay them when that user clicks on that ad and is connected to whatever landing page or content you're driving through that particular ad. So these are very different. One is, and it depends on what your objectives are. If I have an objective for increased awareness about my product or service, I might be interested in the CPM. If I'm interested in selling, I'm converting, then of course I would be more interested in pay-per-click, PPC. We'll talk about this more, but as an introduction, you should at least understand it at that level. And then tracking users, we have a lot of technology available that tracks the user's real activity. And we talked about this before. This is the difference between I'm paying for a billboard on the side of the freeway, and I know that 200,000 cars drive past that billboard every day, and I'm paying some monthly fee to have my product up there, but I have no idea of that community who actually is paying attention and whose behavior has been impacted by my billboard being there. Generally, I can see movement in the market when I have billboards and other marketing, traditional marketing out there. But what's unique about e-commerce is I know exactly who saw that ad, and I know exactly, I can know this. You know, you have to implement some technologies, but I can know exactly who clicked on what and why and what their ongoing behavior was. I can even see exactly what they did when they came to the landing page. I know how much time they spent on that page. The point here is that we have the technology, the monitoring technology, to know exactly what individuals' behaviors are. I didn't spend a lot of time on this in the class, but this is important, and it's web presence goals. We'll talk about again more later, but like for everything in this test, a lot of it is introductory to you. So I'll need you to at least be able to share that you generally understand it. And then for the second half of the semester, mostly related to your projects, you'll show me by demonstrate your knowledge by applying it to your project. But this web presence goal it's just understanding what's the objective of your site. And you think about, just to go back to something we've already talked about, the buyer versus the shopper versus the browser. You need to understand the behavior intention of your visitor, and then be able to have the right resources. By the way, a really good website will react to all of the different behaviors. You'll have a click here to buy something right away. You'll have a click here to compare these different products. You'll have a click here to just kind of browse around, because maybe you aren't looking for anything in particular and you're just looking for things. But and down below, we to effectively communicate, we need to understand who our addressable market is, and we have to make sure that we're applying other web presence attributes, like it's easy to use, it's easy to navigate, it's easy to read. It's not, you've seen websites that are poorly designed, and you just think, well, they could give a shit about their website, so they can't care about their product. There's this whole branding thing that's all related, and it's not bullshit. It's real. I mean, if somebody has a thoughtful website that's very simple and it meets the objective and the expectations of the user, and it matches the brand, then that's a good site. You've seen some sites that are over architected, over designed, like maybe I don't know, this is a real example, but maybe it's like lawn mowing services, and it's got this super fancy website. I would think, really? That doesn't match. I mean, I want someone to come over and mow my lawn. I'm not looking for some pretty website. I'm looking for basic information, maybe with some reviews that talk about how great this person is and how reliable at a reasonable price, and they make my lawn look nice, whatever. So at the bottom, we have rating services. So there are things out there. So for almost everything, you can find a service that will give you that. During the break, Maria and I were talking about her looking for a platform that allowed for selling podcasts and managing that activity, that relationship with the customers. And I would imagine that it exists, but maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But we've had this thing called the internet, and we've been doing so many variations of e-commerce that most things exist online. And so the rating services as well exist to manage the quality of the available content that exists. Search engines cannot be minimized at all. I say watch this Moz video. They're one of the top search engine optimization consultants around, and it's a short video just as an introduction. If you're not familiar with SEO, this is about organic search. So if they're not paying for it, they're just typing in keywords into search bar, and boom, who shows up at top? That's not magic. Now it's not public. It's the algorithm that Google and other search engine providers use. It's proprietary, but there are enough cause and effects that experts have identified what the principal differentiators are that create a more relevant, a higher placed resulting page as a result of a particular search based on keywords. And even most, including Google, have they'll make recommendations to you as to what you should do on your website to improve your SEO, search engine optimization. And it's free. Of course, it takes work to do the search engine optimization, but the results are that you get free marketing by Google. Different than that are the Google ad networks like AdWords or Facebook ads. URLs, it's not insignificant activity. The naming, how do you decide to name your site? Are you a .com or a .eu or a .gov or a .org or a whatever? The top level domain, TLD, is part of your marketing and should reflect part of your strategy relative to your target market. And you have to think about that. Think about the languages that you're going to use, thinking about what regions you're going to operate in, and just knowing that ultimately this is all managed by one organization globally, this ICANN, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. So if you go to Cesnom or GoDaddy or your ISP and you register your website, you're registering it with an agent, a broker that has been certified as a broker working on behalf of ICANN. So they follow the rules of ICANN. They use the systems of ICANN so that when you actually launch a website, for example, coke.eu, that website and the IP address of that website is all updated in all the routers around the world. So this is a huge job, of course, but there's one systems that is managing. This is for the internet, of course. We're not talking about other non-internet related networking systems. And then the last chapter is selling to business. And this is, we just went over it, so I don't think I need to talk about it too much more, other than simply we're talking about taking the friction out of doing business. We want to make business happen better, faster, cheaper. So we want to find quality problems, like people entering data. Stop it. If they enter it in the system once, then that's it. Then from then on, it should be an automated thing in terms of document control, document management, version control. All of that should be managed by the system. The flow of information through the system, from an idea through design development, through production manufacturing, marketing and distribution, sales, and ongoing support, all that stuff should be in a system. I think a great example of that would be ALSA. That ALSA is connected on the back end to its suppliers, and on the front end, it's connected to its customers, so that I can go log on, see my order, click on my order, click on, in my order is the serial number of the product that I bought. They don't have this connection yet, but I bet they will in the future. Later, I'll be able to click on that serial number, and I will be connected back to the manufacturer of that product to validate where it is in its warranty, and or what kinds of other product information I might need to support my after purchase service as a client. So we think about all these things being connected, and that improves the efficiency and effectiveness of my operation, hopefully delivering a better profits by increasing revenue or decreasing expenses. And we think about the IT enablers that we have: infrastructure as a service, software as a service. We have artificial intelligence as a service. We have Office applications, Microsoft 365, Google Suite, MS Teams, So it's endless. But the idea is that you now know that those are the things that when you're going to evaluate how you can improve your project, this is what you should be considering and looking towards. And this is the last thing, and it's just being able to articulate what's going on with your project. And quite frankly, I'm just looking to test whether you're engaged or not with your project. So it's kind of funny. Sometimes I ask, I had 3 people in a project, describe it one way, and then one person has a completely different idea about what the project is about. So I shouldn't say that, because I'm not looking for, everyone to parrot the same answer, but I'm looking for, do you really understand what it is that you're going after? And I'd like to keep coming back to this Bob's tools and things, just mostly because I've told you the case is about differentiation, and the case is a little tricky because it's kind of a simple case in some respects, but it's tricky in that we set you up to kind of take a left turn and get distracted by Sarah talking about starting this new business online, and that's just crazy. I mean, why would you start a new business? You have a business, and there are a lot of other people already out there online. Why don't you take advantage of your strengths and look for opportunities, and you can use this to mitigate the risk associated to weaknesses and also threats by competition. But so go back through your case notes and our discussions about Bob's tools and things so that you can be able to share your understanding of how important that is, because that case in terms of differentiation is really what I'm going to be looking for in your projects after the midterm. So that's your midterm. It's going to, I haven't thought yet about how exactly, I have the midterm already drafted, but I might modify it a bit online in terms of its length. But expect that it would probably be about 4 times as long as the quiz in a very similar format.
Do you mean, I'm sorry for the interruption, do you mean that you will have around 20 questions or 24 questions?
Mm-hmm. Maybe. Mm-hmm.
And I know these questions are really like simple or downgraded, but I'm trying to ask, how many open-ended questions do we have, and how many multiple choice questions are we like going to face?
Look at the ratio will be similar to that, the quiz. I really tried to make the quiz, and I will make sure that the midterm is really just like the quiz times 4 times in terms of length, but the same types of questions, the same ratio of like multiple choice versus open-ended.
So 5 chapters basically from the slides for 24 questions.
Roughly.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
There might be more than 24 questions though.
Yeah, I was just like, trying to, try to expect what the unexpected.
Yeah.
I like, doesn't matter the length, if it was 50 or 10.
Yeah. Usually, historically, students finish the test between 1.5 and 2.5 hours. And the 2.5 hours are outliers. Usually it's like 1 or 2 students, for whatever reason, they just are loving the test so much they can't put it down.
But you're still going to give us a time limit of 2.5 hours, correct me if I'm wrong.
You can use this all the time. Yeah, 3 hours if you want, but I'm just historically and the ones who finish quickly, like 1.5 hours, and sometimes it's an hour, but an hour and a half are typically the ones who get the better grades. I've said this before, I'm not looking for essay long PhD papers. I'm looking for the answer. And I write it in a way that you can usually within 3 sentences or so. It's, I mean, the quiz was the same. So you know.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
the questions about the case would be also involved.
Yes, sir.
About the BOFs. Yeah, thank you.
May, by the way, May, Marek, May. Not for sure, but May.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which chapters are there again?
Pardon?
Which chapters again, exactly?
1 through 6.
Okay.
Who asked that?
Me, Sasha.
Hey, Sasha. I can't see everyone online.
Actually, for some reason, my video, like if I have an X on the video, when I click on the start video, it does nothing. I don't know.
Mhm. Maybe there's parental controls on your laptop.
It was working yesterday.
I'm teasing you. Here's something else I'll offer. Go on, I'll put this on Slack. I'm going to put this in e-learning. Everything that's really important, I put in e-learning, like as content, but Slack is like content plus discussion. So I'll put it on Slack, and if we want to ask me questions, I'll answer the questions there in public, so everybody gets the benefit of the question and the answer. Other questions? This is it for the day. So we have 18 minutes, but it's up if you want to hang it up and go drink a beer or something, or you want to ask me questions, whatever. I'd go for the beer myself. Nothing? Well, I'm gonna say auf Wiedersehen then, and have a good week. You don't have to just stare at my mug for 15 minutes because that's the time. So if you have any questions, again, ask me online, and good luck. So after the class, excuse me, after the midterm, that's it for the class. So this is just focus on studying the stuff for the week for the midterm, and then we'll come back strong afterwards, after the midterm, and jump on the project. And that's where I think it really starts this class. To me, I think I said this before, but it really becomes a lot more fun after the midterm, because we're spending less time just capturing new ideas, and we're pushing them into our projects, and hopefully you've picked projects that you are truly interested in, and that's a lot more fun. And I'll try to, Benjamin, I'll try to figure out how to work with work groups.
Sorry, can you just repeat real quick what you mentioned in the beginning, because I didn't catch it, about like the project? I think you were talking about the project in the very beginning, right?
The beginning of what?
Of
This review?
Beginning of this class today.
I'm sorry, sir,
Can
following
you be more
Sasha's
specific?
question.
I thought you were talking about activity 2.0 in the beginning. Well, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I did, but I'm like, what?
You know, it says like activity 2.0 due Monday, and I was just wondering, just to repeat that part.
Oh, no. That's simply the page from the activity that was assigned last week.
Wow.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry if that was confusing. Maybe I was too lazy, but I just took a picture of the activity that I gave you last week as a reference to, that's what we're gonna talk about, which was that activity,
Okay.
which we talked about at the beginning of the class.
Uh-huh.
Wait, now I'm confused. Yeah, Abdel?
Yes, sir. So for activity 2, is it like over now? Like we
Yeah,
have
it's
received your
over.
feedback?
Yeah, done. No more work. Just
We also-
the only related to your project is everyone on the team needs to understand what the project is about. And I don't know, maybe I'm saying something that's obvious, but often 1 or 2 or 3 people on a team do all the work, right? And then there's this person who has no clue what the hell the project is about. Well, if that person doesn't engage with their team and figure out what their project is about, they're going to probably miss any question I ask when I say, tell me what your project is about.
Exactly. I understand it.
I mean, at the university level, like maybe I'm babying someone too much, but I find sometimes it's that last 10 or 15% you gotta kind of play Australian Shepherd and bite their ankles a little bit.
Perfect. Thank you, sir, for time. Is it off for today?
That's it. So if you have any other questions, ask me on Skype and I'll answer them there.
Awesome.
Okay,
Please have a wonderful evening, sir, and we'll see you next week.
I will.
Good
You too.
evening.
Good luck, guys.
Goodbye, sir.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.